Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plain Talk. I'm your host, AJ Rivera, and today I'm joined by yet another governor candidate, Tim James. Mr. James, how are you doing today?
AJ, good to see you. Good to be in Auburn.
Absolutely. So, well, we're glad to have you here. Glad to have you on our show. So let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your campaign and why you're running.
Well, I'm from Opelika, actually, and I went to Auburn University a long time ago. I met my bride here, and when I come on campus, it's still amazing at the growth at this university over the last many decades. I live in Greenville, Alabama. We have 3 adult children, 3 grandbaby boys. And I've spent, my background is primarily in the construction and road construction type business. And, you may or may not remember, but in 2010 I ran for governor. I missed a runoff by 158 votes, if you can believe that. Effectively, probably would have won the race, but for that, and that taught a very valuable lesson that every vote really does count. And I thought that I was done with politics. I'm way past or way outgrown wanting to be governor for the sake of it. And I was called back into this a year ago because I think the nation is hanging in the balance. We've been on a slide for half a century. We're watching federal overreach that people are now beginning to talk about and think about, but it's been going on a long time. And I guess if you ask me what is the specific thing that has drawn me into this race at this moment, I just think if good people do not engage and take this nation back, we'll lose it. And we're under assault by a Marxist type agenda. And, they do it by infiltrating the nation without a shot being fired. And so everybody senses this, AJ. We're sort of at that tipping point and hanging in the balance. And that's why I'm here to fight this fight. And the battle really is a cultural battle. And the battle is for the soul of a nation.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's a very crowded race that we're seeing this year. Just amongst Republicans alone, there's 9 total candidates that are running. What separates you from other Republicans?
Well, a governor's race in Alabama always draws a crowd. And I guess, the candidates, most of them I really don't know. I met them, nice people. The one candidate that I do know and that I'm focused on is Governor Ivey, who I know quite well. Governor Ivey, my family's been a friend for 40 years, and this is not one of those things that you look forward to. But the problem is that our state is out of control. And, the structures of government have overrun state government, and it's proving out to be true. And I think this governor is overwhelmed. And this is what we're seeing. When the Republican Party in Alabama is the party pushing 10 casinos in the state. She said yesterday her biggest regret is not getting her casino bill passed. When the governor of Alabama have signed a medical marijuana bill, and it has nothing to do with medicine. It is about setting up a distribution to distribute dope on the streets of this state, disguised as medicine. That's a Republican governor. When a Republican governor passes a gas tax that is a 55% increase at one time, and then a tail to it where it escalates forever and ever. We've never seen this before. When a governor of Alabama shuts down churches and mom and pop stores and lets the big boxes stay open, that is not the kind of Republican that I am. And finally, and more recently, we have been talking about this in the news, but the first LGBTQ school in the South was put into Birmingham, Alabama. It is nothing but an attack on these children struggling. The teachers are transgender people, and they even had put a drag show on at the school for these children a few weeks ago, and this is being paid for with $2 million of our tax dollars that was appropriated in the budget by this governor. So there is no other explanation other than the structures are in control of this state. I stand on the other side of these issues, and I will reverse them all, and especially this situation in the school in Birmingham, because it is abuse of children like I've never seen before in my life.
Well, you bring up a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Let's, get right into those, starting first with casino gambling and with the institution of the lottery. Now, you say you're very against expanding, casino gambling within the states. What are your thoughts on bringing in an educational lottery like that has been proposed in the state legislature?
Well, everything they have proposed they tie them together. They're very savvy. They know what they're doing. Their polls will show you that 60-70% of the Republican voters are against the casinos. They don't want casinos. They'll show that the lottery runs about 60% for. So people separate casinos and lottery in their mind, and I mean Republicans. But when every bill that's come down the pike, they tie them together. So they're trying to. It's kind of a bait and switch thing. They want you to vote for the lottery, but you get the casinos. The reason I'm against gambling, and a governor can't directly affect it because it's a constitutional amendment. So if the legislature passes any sort of gambling, it doesn't even come to a governor's desk. It goes straight to the ballot and people vote on it. But I have an opinion. What's good and bad, and as governor, I would say this is bad. I mean, all sorts of gambling, and this is why I'm against it. Casinos and lottery, the poorest 1/3 of our people put half the money in it. So in other words, the ones that can least afford it are funding half the money with money they can't afford to give away because you never win. And their children are going wanting. The problem with the gambling boys, AJ, is they're dishonest. They could care less. They'll say it's for education and it's going to grow the economy and it's all economic development. That's total and complete nonsense. It's hogwash. The cost associated with all gambling is greater than the economic benefits. It has been studied ad nauseum for 30 years in this country. So that's just not true. If the gambling boys were just honest and say, look, we could care less about the people. We could care less about especially the people on the lower end of the spectrum, economic spectrum. We just want to make the money. That's honest. But they don't do that. So I'm against it. And, if the legislature passes it, I will fight. I will do my best to hopefully get them not to go there, and let's put this behind us. But if they do, people can vote. I will vote no, and I will tell everybody that I know and give them my opinion.
So moving on now, still, kind of with the lottery because it's being proposed now to fund education. Let's get right on into education. So U.S. News recently put out their statistics for state rankings nationwide. Alabama, when it came to pre-K through 12th grade education, was ranked 45th nationally. Our higher education, a little bit better, but still 39th. Now, elected governor, what would you do to impact and in approaching the education situation here in Alabama?
Well, I think the U.S. News report is incorrect. We're not 45th. We're closer to 50th. We're worse. So in the early 2000s, when Bob Riley was governor, we were 39th in reading, and about in 05 or 06, we were like 27th in math. So over this decade to a decade and a half, the revenue going into the Education Trust Fund has been like this. It's been growing at double the rate of inflation, and our grade scores are collapsing, and it's undeniable. We used to say, thank God for Mississippi. Now Mississippi says, thank God for Alabama. So we have totally collapsed, total destruction of our education system K through 12. As governor, I intend to deconstruct it to the foundation and rebuild it from the bottom up. So what does that mean? That's your next question, right?
Yeah. I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? To
spell it out.
Down? Yeah.
Number one, AG, you have to have discipline in classrooms. I travel the state. I cannot tell you the numbers of teachers that I have talked to. They'll say, look, I can't teach. I have 23 kids in my class. 2 of them are out of control day after day, a total distraction. I'm a babysitter. Teacher's job is not to babysit. It is to teach. At some point, you have to remove those 2 so that the teacher can teach the remaining 20 students in the class. you can't tolerate it anymore. What's happening is this disruption is going on, and the principals, and no one's doing anything about it. I intend to do something about it. Number two, you got to get the best principals in this nation in the worst schools. You got to pay them, and then you have to tie it to performance. Now, you have to give you can't expect a principal to turn a school around unless you give him unfettered ability to do whatever he needs to do, period. And then you hold him accountable. And accountability is not what you would call an overall ranking. It's not fair to compare Selma High School to Mountain Brook, right? Or Madison. Right. But it is reasonable to compare Selma High School to Selma High School year over year. And if they're getting better, you're improving, and a principal should reap economic benefits for the performance in those schools. And then I think the third issue, and this one is now really beginning to get real legs as people are thinking about this, and as it's dawned on typical moms and dads across the spectrum of this state, is how bad we're performing now, is what they call school choice. And really what that means is nothing more than the money follows the child. Right now, money is allocated to each school based on the number of students. So it's so much a kid, like $5,600. And what I believe, and I think most Republicans, the ones that are running, not the governor, support this, is that now all of a sudden a parent, a mom or a dad who have their children in a pathetic school can pull their kid out and get a voucher or a tax credit, and they can take it and go to any other public school that has a slot, any private school, any charter school, or any home school without any restrictions whatsoever. Now, this bill got tangled up in the legislature and died because they were trying to throw amendments on it that put all these restrictions on homeschoolers and private schools. I'm not for that. Right now, homeschoolers score about 40% above the national average on the Stanford. So we needn't worry about them, where moms and dads are taking their time to teach their children. They're just, right now, what's happening, moms and dads are paying for your kids to go to school, and they're paying for theirs as well. That will put competition into the system. It will shake the system to its core. And that's the first major step to begin to turn this thing around.
So we move on now to talking about the gas tax, which I know you mentioned earlier. So for everyone watching at home, back in 2019, Governor Kay Ivey introduced her Rebuild Alabama Infrastructure Plan. Now, this obviously is to improve the infrastructure across the state. To help fund the majority of this plan was included a increase in the gas tax. Something that we've seen over the past 3 years has been a 10-cent gas tax increase. Now, elected governor, what would you do regarding infrastructure and regarding the gas tax?
Well, and I understand infrastructure. I build stuff. So I understand roads and bridges and these things. Number one, when they pass the gas, and I'm not one of these guys that says never, never, we're not going to put some cents on to build roads and bridges. I get it. I know what it costs. I know how to do it. I know all these things. But that's not who I am. But 10 cents at one time was a 55% increase in tax in one time. It was over a couple of years. I've never heard of a 55% increase in a tax in my life. That would be as if your state income tax went from 5% to 7.5% overnight. If they did that, you'd have a revolution. People would go nuts, and that's exactly what they did on the gas tax, 55%. So on one hand, a dime doesn't sound like that much when gas was $1.80, but a dime sounds like a lot when it's $4. And the problem was, my guess is the governor, no one bothered to show the governor a chart of oil and gas. It goes up, you get these inflationary periods, then it comes down. And so they passed that legislation when it was about $1.80, and no one gave it a lot of thought. What they should have done is they could have put 4 or 5 cents tax on it. They should have put a trigger at $2.60, $2.80, somewhere up there. So if you all of a sudden we're flowing into a potential high inflationary period, it comes off. And it's not so much the 4 cents or 10 cents. It's that on top of everything else. You get up, you drive to work, you got to put the gas. You come home, you go to work, you come home, somebody goes to the grocery store, mom goes to buy the groceries, and everything's inflating. If it was just the gas tax, it wouldn't be as terrible. The burden that it's putting on Alabama citizens. And then the other component to it is this escalation clause. I call it the never-ending escalation clause. And I've never seen this, is where the tax automatically escalates forever. Forever. In other words, it would be, let's talk, just to explain it in simple terms, it would be as if your 5% state income tax was 5% this year, 5.2% next year, 5.7% the next year, 5.9% the next year, on and on and on forever. And the future generations have nothing to say about it. That's what Kay Ivey did. So I don't get it. This is not, if this is what a Republican is, okay, I'm not one of them. It's not, this is not the tenets of this party, the party of Reagan. This is the new wing of the Republican Party, and there really is no difference between this and the typical talking points inside the Democratic Party in this state.
So something else that's been a really big impact, and you talked about inflation that we're seeing, you know, statewide and really nationwide right now. Just, you know, where Alabama was, you know, the cost of living has gone up about 8% since last April. Now, what would you do to help bring down inflation and just improving the Alabama economy?
Well, a governor, you know, the inflation is a macroeconomic issue, and when governors say I can do, that's just not, you can't do that. But what you should do is we need to give money back to the citizens of Alabama. We had a $1.5 billion surplus this year in the budget, okay? What I would have done is given it back to the people in tax breaks. It's that simple. It's their money. Kay Ivey's chosen to hand it out like candy to every little pet project across the state. And it's not that these things are bad, but their priorities are wrong. People are suffering. Number two, we need to finally get rid of the tax on essential groceries. That's on the state portion. That's about $500 million. That's giving money back to the people. That's how our governor should react. If gas stays in this $4 range, I would probably go and pause at some point soon, because we don't know if this inflationary period goes on for 6 months, a year, or longer. I mean, you don't know. So right now, the most important thing that we can do is get money back in people's pockets so they can buy food, clothing, and the basic essentials.
Well, Mr. James, that's everything that we have prepared for you. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about today?
Well, AJ, thank you. It's good to be in Auburn. Goodness gracious, I got here 42 years ago.
Wow.
And I was on the 5-year plan because I enjoyed it so much, including a summer or two. And but Auburn is a great place, a great college. And you know, I was looking at so many of the kids running around. I mean, it's uplifting to me, the wholesome nature of our southern universities, and especially Auburn. And it just what you're doing is great. The studios, all the facilities here are first class. So I would encourage you to stay active in this. I hope you will always be true. Tell the truth in journalism. Don't shade it, because journalism has lost its footing, its foundation. And what we know is true journalism is you don't see it anymore in American politics. Everything is jaded. And I think there's a great market for young men and women to step into and not get swayed. Either way, just tell the truth. Tell the stories like they are. And I think you'll do great.
Well, Mr. James, that's definitely very encouraging. And I just want to welcome you back home, back to Auburn. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today for Plain Talk. For everyone watching at home, make sure to follow us on social media at Eagle Eye TV, and check out our website, eagleeyeauburn.com. Throughout this election cycle and just from now on, we are your home for Auburn news. But for now, I've been AJ Rivera. Thank you, and War Eagle.
War Eagle.